Okay, so if you've been watching my channel, you might have seen that I did a couple videos talking about the trend of collabs. So many companies right now are doing this thing where they're taking two different popular properties and they're smashing them together to make a mashup property, a mashup toy or collectible or what have you. And, you know, in those videos, I felt like I did a pretty fair job of expressing that I think there have been cool collabs, I think there have been mediocre collabs, but it's just the collab idea as a whole that I personally am a little bored of. I didn't mean to speak for everybody, but I know I'm not alone in that. It's just one of those things that maybe it doesn't appeal to me. Sometimes it does. There are some cool things. One of the things I talked about in that video, though, was one of the announcements at San Diego Comic-Con where we found out that Masters of the Universe is mashing together with Transformers. And in that video, I expressed that I felt it would have been a little more interesting for me if it was the other way around and Transformers were producing Masters of the Universe themed actual Transformers, a robot that can transform into a vehicle from Masters of the Universe. But what we're getting from Mattel is a series of Masters of the Universe origin style action figures that are essentially dressed up as Transformers characters. So, Mattel's response to me talking about collabs, they sent me the new figures. So, very special thanks to Mattel for sending these over so we can check them out early. Look, I'm gonna do what I always do. We are gonna take a look at these toys for what they are. We can just leave aside my opinions on collabs because that's a thing. That's the way I feel about it. I've already expressed those feelings. Let's look at the toys as toys and just see how they measure up. So as you can see, they come in these really cool looking window box packages. And I actually commented on this at Comic-Con, but I do really like this retro Transformers grid design on the front of the packages there. I love the kind of grid-formed Snake Mountain on the Skeletor package, the Castle Grayskull on the Man-At-Arms package, and of course they're color coordinated. You can see we got the Autobots logo and the Decepticon logo on the top of the windows, and then the little card backs on the top there have both the MOTU and Transformers logos, the exploding rocks from the MOTU packages that are in that grid-like pattern from the Transformers packages. I mean, it's a pretty fun mashup in designs. Plus, we've got our familiar artwork on the top of the packages of both of these characters. Always a big fan of the artwork on MOTU packages, of course. And the two characters that this line is kicking off with is Megatron Armor Skeletor, the evil Decepticon Lord of Destruction, and Bumblebee Armor Man-At-Arms, the heroic Autobot Weapons Master. That's one of those things I specifically asked Damon about at Comic-Con. I asked why Man-At-Arms was Bumblebee, and the answer that he gave was, well, Bumblebee is Optimus Prime's right-hand man, Man-At-Arms is He-Man's right-hand man, and that's how they decided on the Bumblebee Man-At-Arms mashup. You can see the sides of the packaging has really awesome artwork of the characters, just like their standard looks. And on the other side, we get the Transformers. We get Bumblebee and Megatron in matching artwork. That's actually pretty cool. And then on the back of the packaging, again, gorgeous artwork with Man-At-Arms in his Bumblebee-inspired armor, Skeletor in his Decepticon Megatron armor, and then you can see we've got our action feature callouts on the bottom, letting you know that you can combine the sword and shield into an Energon dagger for Man-At-Arms. He's also got a visor you can clip on, and then Skeletor's Havoc Staff, you can replace the cannon barrel to change it into a Havoc Staff, or you can put the Energon mace onto his wrist. So there's some fun stuff. That's like their way of doing transformations, but you know, it's kind of just the usual pop and play, mix and match parts that we always get from the Origins line. But, you know, that's pretty clever for this. So, I don't know, let's open these collabs up and we'll take a look at them. Oh man, I do have to show you this while I was opening these up. You open the flap up and look, you get the little bio with like the strength charts and everything. Strength, speed, endurance, courage, power, skill, which is something straight off of Transformers. That is a pretty fun little detail right there. Look at that. Okay, pretty good stuff, Mattel. Okay, so before we dive into looking at the figures, I do want to talk a little bit about the mini comic that comes with both of them. Now, I'm gonna give spoilers here. So if you don't want to be spoiled by the story of this toy line, I would recommend skipping ahead right now. You've been warned, here we go. So both figures come with a brand new mini comic called By the Energon of Grayskull. The story begins on Cybertron, where you can see the war happening as Optimus is calling for evacuation as the planet is about to see its doom, and some sort of capsule gets launched from Cybertron and happens to crash land on Eternia, where it's found by Man-At-Arms. Man-At-Arms sees a message from Optimus Prime and Bumblebee to learn about Cybertron, and just as he's about to crack open this capsule to see what's inside, he is ambushed by Skeletor, who's already in full-on Megatron getup. Apparently, he's got the power of Megatron, and he's here to steal the Energon from Grayskull, which is a really interesting thing to say. He-Man shows up and he starts somehow zapping that power away from He-Man before he is stopped by Man-At-Arms. So really interesting stuff, because they explain in here that Energon and the power of Grayskull just happen to be one and the same. All right. So here we get a fun little spoiler for probably what's coming next with this toy line, as He-Man and Man-At-Arms discuss Energon and the power of Grayskull being the same thing, and talking about the war between the Autobots and the Decepticons, and then we get Man-At-Arms in his full-on Bumblebee getup, as well as He-Man in an Optimus Prime getup. But the next page is where things get really interesting, because, as you can see, Skeletor approaches Scareglow and asks for Scareglow's help in achieving this power, and gives him the power of Starscream, which is really interesting, and you can see likely another figure that is coming in this line. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm kind of wondering, like, would Evil Lyn have been a better choice in this scenario, right? Like, because Starscream is like the right-hand man of Megatron, but he's always trying to overthrow him. And Evil Lyn is oftentimes trying to overthrow Skeletor. So the personalities seem to be the same. However, I'm kind of excited at the prospect of a glow-in-the-dark Scareglow Starscream. Oh, his name better be ScareScream. Oh, come on. Okay, so this brings us to our Skeletor action figure in full-on Megatron getup. Now, if we go ahead and bring the tape measure in here, you can see that the figure stands just shy of 6 inches tall. He is technically in that 5.5 scale, so will fit in with your Masters of the Universe origins. It's meant to fit in with that vintage Masters of the Universe style. If you've been collecting Origins, you know that. But if you're brand new to this because of the Transformers thing, that's what's going on here. These are mimicking the original Masters of the Universe toy line. But the thing about Skeletor in this Megatron disguise that's so different is they really went all out in giving him some brand new parts. So it's almost as if Skeletor is sort of merged with Megatron here, because you can see a lot of his body parts have become a lot blockier, a lot more robotic, specifically with the torso here. Look at this. So this is all a brand new sculpt. This is not removable armor on the torso. This is the sculpt of the torso. So it's very blocky and robotic. I do love how it mimics Skeletor's armor up here, but again, it's very blocky looking with the crossbones, but has the Decepticon logo in the center of it. Even the little flaps that hang down over his shoulders are done in this interesting like hinge articulation, but they still have like this very jagged, blocky look to them. Now, I assume this articulation is here so that the articulation of the arms will still function as you would expect from a MOTU Origins figure, which exactly seems to be the case here. Also, it's worth noting that the arms themselves, at least the upper arms, are the same as what we typically see, but these pieces are clipped on over the shoulders. So we do have these interesting new shoulders that have these little notches in them so that these armor bits can actually plug on. If I can get it, there you go, and like lock in place. So really interesting stuff. But the forearm is all new because this here is not a removable armor piece. This is part of the sculpt. And again, it's squared and blocky, but the hands do just plug right in to those new squared bits there on the forearms. So that's a good time to mention that all of the interchangeability is still here with these figures. So you could still pop the head right off the ball joint. You can remove the new blocky body at the torso. As you can see, he even has a new blocky pelvic piece here, has got a blocky loincloth piece, so that's all brand new on there. You can still pull those shoulders out of socket, you can still pull the boots off, and you can see those lower legs, well, the upper legs are the same as a MOTU Origins figure. The lower legs are also brand new. You got these crazy kind of squared off feet, you got this new boot design here, so there is a lot of new parts going on with Skeletor as Megatron, which is actually pretty cool to see that they gave him so much new. In fact, the head sculpt is actually pretty cool on this guy. I really like the look. I mean, it's already kind of cool having like Skeletor's face inside of like the Megatron helmet. It's worth noting that is all one sculpt. Helmet is not removable. The jaw's not technically articulated, but it's sculpted with an open mouth, and you can see the bottom is pliable, so I can move it. Yes! It's kind of fun. The eyes have like this really cool red look to them where they're like, I don't know, the way the lights hit them, they almost look like they're lighting up. I think it's really cool. But one thing about the face that I want to point out is, while it's a skull face, it's a yellow skull face, you can see it's got that same kind of blockiness to it, this jaggedness, which makes it look like a bot face. Like he's got like a skull bot face for a Transformer. So that's pretty cool too. I do like that. All right, so articulation functions the same, still has all of the same removable bits and bobs. So let's talk about the accessories with this guy. First of all, let's talk about this little sword that he has. It's actually pretty neat looking. You can see it's got like the ram skull on the top. So he can hold onto the sword with either one of his hands because he's got two gripping hands there. But it's also worth noting, it's got this little peg on the side. And you can see there's these peg holes on either side of his little backpack piece here, which this can plug into. So he can actually holster that sword on his back. So that is pretty cool. And then we've got this awesome gun, blaster, Havoc Staff combo thing. So this is meant to be like the big cannon that is on Megatron's arm. And this attaches to Skeletor's arm. In order to do this, these little fins that are on his blocky gauntlets will actually plug into this slot that's on the bottom of the cannon. So this is another reason why they definitely added these hinge joints up here, because you almost need to move this out of the way in order to get this to properly plug into place. Otherwise, it does kind of bump into that a little bit. But you can see it actually locks onto that little ridge pretty well, and now you can pose Skeletor with that giant Megator blaster on his arm. That is pretty cool. We're going to come back to this in just a bit, but I do want to also show this final accessory, which is this crazy plasma whip thing, where you can see it's got this sort of semi-translucent pink blast effect that's coming out of the end. It's got the Havoc Staff ram skull on the end. It's very robotic looking. You can see it's pliable and it flexes. And you can have him hold on to this, so it's sort of like a little whip accessory. So this is pretty fun. It completes the look, but there is a little bit of transformation going on with this figure's action features. That's right, it's a Transformer, so you gotta have transforming bits and bobs and pieces, right? Now, it doesn't transform in the general sense, meaning Skeletor himself doesn't transform, but they did add some elements to the accessories. Now, really, it's more like they're just being broken apart and put back together, much like a lot of the mixing and matching of parts is with MOTU Origins, but it's still kind of fun. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So first of all, with that whip accessory, This one is just, this is no different than a lot of the things we've seen already in Origins, but you can remove this blast effect from the handle, and then this has got the same peg on it as a wrist peg, so you can actually plug this into that wrist gauntlet, and that way it's like his hand has become that laser whip instead, so that's just a different way that you can display him. I do want to point out that since this is made of a softer pliable plastic, that joint really gets stuck in there, and I'm almost worried that I'm gonna like rip it when I'm pulling it out of socket. So I think that's just something I wanted to note so that you can be careful with it. But the next piece is a little more substantial as far as the transformation goes. So that cannon that I showed you, you can actually remove the cannon from the mouth of the ram skull, and then that ram skull folds downwards, and then you can plug that cannon into the bottom of it, and it turns into this large, oversized, robotic-looking version of the Havoc Staff. You can see there's a handle on the inside here, so we can get our Skeletor Megatron to hold on to it, and now he's got this really wacky bot-style version of the Havoc Staff, which is pretty fun. So I know it's not really like a transformation the way you would expect a Transformer to transform, but it's fun that they thought about some of those elements in the design, and overall, I mean, I think this is pretty fun. It's a fun toy, that's for sure. All right, so that's gonna bring us over to Man-At-Arms in his Bumblebee armor. So as mentioned, the reason that they decided to choose Bumblebee for Man-At-Arms was because Bumblebee is Optimus Prime's right-hand man, and Man-At-Arms is the same for He-Man. So that's the reason for merging these two together. One thing that I noticed while looking at this figure is it seems the heroes might be handled a little bit differently, in the sense that with Skeletor, it seemed more like he was merged with Megatron. He's fully robotic looking, he's got this very blocky body, his face looks robotic. Man-At-Arms looks like he's still Man-At-Arms, but it looks like he's got new armor that is inspired by Bumblebee's look. And that is even seen in the design elements, because Man-At-Arms still has a standard muscular MOTU Origins torso. He just has brand new armor that you can take off and put back on, just like a lot of Masters of the Universe armor bits are. It's also made of a very soft, very pliable plastic, so that's worth noting. But it is molded in sort of like this marbleized kind of shiny yellow, and then there's a lot of paint apps on there, including the bright red Autobot logo right there on the chest. There are a mixture of new bits and recycled bits on this figure. He definitely doesn't have as much new going on as Skeletor, like the arms and the legs and the torso that I showed you have definitely all been used in Origins before. But he does have some new things, like these new forearms here have these more blocky looking wrist bracers to match the Transformers look. He's got these new armor bits over here, which these are just, this one's just like you can see the forearm armor slides on over the regular arm. You've got this bit that slides in over the shoulder, and then same with the boot down here. But he does have brand new boots as well, which also have a bit of a blocky look to the feet, and brand new pelvis there too, different loincloth or underwear that he's wearing, and a brand new head sculpt as well. A non-removable helmet. The face actually looks a lot like the first Origins Man-At-Arms, but now he's got a helmet that has some Bumblebee inspiration, like the little horns on there. So it's still a pretty fun look. He's not blocky and Transformers-like the way Skeletor is. It's more like he has brand new armor that's inspired by the Autobots. So he's got this incredibly small removable faceplate, which is kind of a fun accessory. If you look on the sides of his face, you'll notice that there are little notches that are hidden pretty well. And then on the sides of that faceplate, you got those tiny little tabs there. So you can line this up on the face and give it a nice press, and they'll click into place. They actually fit in there pretty tightly, and that actually gives him a much more Cybertronian look, right? Kind of trying to recreate more of a Bumblebee face. Bumblebee, we've seen him with a face mask too in the movies and stuff. I really like this part right here too, because the eye slot is like a translucent blue plastic, so it's kind of hard to see on video, but you can actually see Man-At-Arms' eyes inside there. So I don't know, I like that. I think that is a really cool look. Just don't lose this faceplate. Maybe keep it on there. because I feel like that's going to be something that people could lose pretty easily. It's a fun look. He's got this little blaster, which is pretty cool. So he can hold on to this blaster in either one of his hands. He actually gets a pretty good grip on it. Unlike Skeletor, he doesn't really have anywhere to holster his extra weapons. I do kind of wish he had somewhere to tuck this blaster away when he's not using it, because with all the weapons he has, he just doesn't have a place to store all this extra stuff. Because he also comes with this semi-translucent blue Cybertronian blade, which is pretty cool. Now there's actually a second use for this. So he can just hold it as a sword, but he also comes with this really cool new version of the shield, which again, Autobots logo, but still looks like it totally is a Man-At-Arms shield. So it's got a handle on the underside, and it's got a clip so you can clip it on his arm, but you might notice that it's also got this little notch right here. This is actually to hold onto this blade. So we can attach the blade to that clip on the inside, and now the shield has got that like laser Cybertronian sword blade jutting out the end of it. So that's just another way that you can display that. And then of course he's got a standard Man-At-Arms style mace, but it's been Cybertroned up. Is that a word? Can I use that to describe something? It's been Cybertroned. Has a bit of a Bumblebee-like look there, so you can plug that in his hand. I also noticed that there is a hole on the bottom of it, and the instructions don't explicitly say this, but it does fit that sword as well, so I think that's just another way that you can kind of mix and match these parts so that you can make it your own. I mean, you can just transform the weapons, and Man-At-Arms can use whatever he feels like he needs to when doing battle against evil. So the mixing and matching of parts, of course, is the same as the other figures. You can still pop all of these parts apart, and that way if you want to use some of these pieces for some of your existing figures, it's totally possible. Sort of like this. I don't know, this just felt like something I needed to do. Because why wouldn't we have a Buzz-Off Bumblebee? So you can do something like this if you want to. You can take all the parts apart and put them back together and build whatever you want out of these new Transformers pieces. Okay, you know, I don't really have a lot of Transformers figures myself. I'm a He-Man collector, I'm a Ninja Turtles collector. I don't have a lot of Transformers, but my kids do. So thanks to my kids, it's comparison time! Here we've got our brand new Megatron Skeletor standing alongside a Megatron. Yeah, that's Megatron, right? So you can see the similarities with the big cannon and the head. There you go. Comparison time. And here's our new Man-At-Arms Bumblebee standing next to a couple of Bumblebees. That way you can kind of see the similarities between them. Those are pretty cool, right?
Dad, can I have my toys back now?
Oh, yeah, buddy. Here you go. I'm sorry.
Next time, ask before you take my toys.
That's fair. Yeah, I will. I'm sorry.
I don't just walk in here and take your toys.
That's true. Sorry. So there you go, my friends. That is a look at the brand new Masters of the Universe Transformers Collab figures, with Skeletor as Megatron and Man-At-Arms as Bumblebee. Look, as toys, they're fun. They are fun. They're well-made toys. The designs are pretty neat. Just because I'm being a curmudgeon about collabs doesn't mean that I instantly hate everything. And if this is something that looks like you would be into, I think you should check them out. I think you'd be into it. If you like collabs and you like Transformers and MOTU, maybe this is something you've been waiting for. I think that they're well-made toys. They're fun. And I do want to give a very special thanks to Mattel for sending these along so we can get a good look at them outside of the packaging. So these are on pre-order right now at MattelCreations.com. They are priced at $33 per figure, which is quite a bit higher than what we typically pay for a MOTU Origins figure. Plus you're going to have tax, plus you're going to have shipping. So these are a bit on the pricey side. One has to wonder if the Transformers license has something to do with that extra price point. But that really is another layer of how much do you really need these. So if you're interested, MattelCreations.com, go check them out. And thank you guys very much for watching. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Are you going to be collecting Transformers and Masters of the Universe? What do you think about the possibility of Wave 2 with He-Man, Optimus Prime, and ScareScream? Honestly, I am kind of excited to see what ScareScream looks like. Until next time, my friends.